Hey everyone, Uta Alexander here with Xander Blades. Welcome to part 2 of the Friction Folder vlog. In this episode we're going to be covering a bit of Fusion 360 design, the makeup of the knife itself, some specific design aspects, as well as the componentry we're going to be using. So let's get right into it, jump to Fusion 360 and let's see what we're up to. Alright, so here we are in Fusion 360 and where the hell's my model? Oh damn! There it is. Whew! That's what we're going to be talking about today, everyone. So this is the prototype design right now. Whoa, crazy. Okay, so what we're going to be covering, let's have a look at the blade first. So like in the previous video, we've maintained the blade shape. And here it is. So this is what the knife's going to look like closed. Pretty sweet. Bit of a extended tang for one-hand opening, but we'll talk about that later. So the blade, we have the design itself is quite a strong, versatile design. Got a nice curve at the bottom, and that should be really easy to sharpen as well. A decent strong tip, which is going to be great for use on farm. I really like this choil design. It's nice, sleek, sort of sweeping design in here, and the purpose of the choil is to separate the cutting edge from the rest of the body to make it easier to sharpen, essentially. Right, so the next part of that is the rounded tang. So as you can see, this tang is rounded not only this way, but around the edges as well, and the idea behind that is so that it is comfortable with your thumb in your hand, and in your pocket so it doesn't poke you. The extended tang, like I mentioned before, is good because it allows you to open the knife with one hand, with your thumb. And it's ambidextrous as well, so left or right-handed user, no problem there. The scales for the first iteration, or the first prototype, most likely they're going to be wooden scales, either walnut or a walnut resin mix, hybrid mix. And as you can see here, I'm going to be using some stainless steel liners. Now the reason for the liners is because of, here we go. Because we're going to be using washers in the middle, it's between the blade and the scales, or the liners I suppose. The reason for the liners is because the scales are going to be wood. It's really good idea to have something solid for the washers to sit on, so that there's no compression there once everything gets tightened up, and that eliminates a lot of blade play sort of issues as well, which is going to be fantastic. We're also going to be having a backspacer, and sort of I had to deliberate about whether to custom make a backspacer for each knife or to go ahead and, buy cylindrical standoffs. Now, essentially what it came down to was cylindrical standoffs just aren't made in the right sizes, and it's going to be easier for me to make my own with the CNC mill. As well as that, because I don't have a surface grinder, each blade is going to be slightly different thickness, so that's going to change the thickness at the back. So each one will be individually made, which is going to be awesome. Oh, by the way, that backspacer is most likely going to be G10 for the first couple of models, and then maybe we can do something a bit fancier as well. As you can see, the other thing is, let's have a look at that from back profile. These edges on the inside, I've drawn them as rounded, but I'm deliberating whether I should just grind that flat so it's a flat surface all along, because these little grooves in here might create a bit more space for dirt and dust to settle in, and it's just not going to be very nice. So I might change that and have them flat ground, which will be quite cool. And we're going to have 4 backspacer screws, 2 on each side. They're going to be meeting halfway, or just shy of halfway, so there's a little bit of play there. These screws here, they're actually going to be stainless steel button head screws, and with Torx heads, a Torx T6 and a 2x56 coarse thread. The reasoning behind the thread is not only was it the only one available, but it also should bite in a little bit better to the G10 because I'm going to be cutting a thread into the G10. So that's quite cool. Now let's move up to the front of the knife, where we're going to be talking about the pivot, essentially the pivot design. So I'm going to have 2 pivot screws on either side of the blade. This isn't an accurate representation of the Torx head, but essentially I just put it in there to see what it was going to look like. So that's actually going to be a Torx T10 head, and the screw itself has a 6x64 fine thread cut into it, which is going to be fantastic for adjusting the compression or the tightness of the fit. Yeah, so let's take the display scale away, and we need to get rid of liner 1 as well. Okay, so here we see, I might just put edges on there. Oh, no, there we go. There we go. So here we can see the mechanism of the inside. This is, oh yeah, I kind of forgot to mention the washers. I'm going to be using Phosphor bronze washers, 1 on each side, and they are, let me just find the details, washers, yeah, 3/16 diameter on the inside, so they fit our pivot barrel here, and they're going to be 5/16 on the outside, and you can see I've left a little bit of an edge for the stop pin raceway, just to keep it nice and tidy. They're also 0.015 inches thick, which is about 0.381 millimeters, so quite thin, and that should help with keeping the profile down. Oh, the advantages of a phosphor bronze washers, and the reason I've gone with them, is they're not as smooth as Teflon, but they are a lot more rigid, and they can be polished to give it a little bit of a smoother action. Now that's not a big deal because this is a friction folder after all, so they're going to be friction locked together, not locked, but you know. So let me get rid of that screw, and this is our pivot barrel. That is a stainless steel pivot barrel with a 3/16 diameter on the outside and a 6x64 inside fine thread to go with our pivot screws. The blade and the scales, as well as the liners, are actually going to be drilled and reamed to size to make sure that this fits perfectly inside it. Right. Oh, and the stop pin as well. This is going to be a stainless steel stop pin, a 3/16 diameter for the raceway. This is what it's going to be like. Actually, it might be easier to see it like this. So closed position, it's going to sit there and just lock the blade in place. Open position, lock that into place. So it's easy. The pins, the stop pins, are going to be made from, like I said, stainless steel round bar, and they're actually going to be cut to size for each knife, and they are going to be friction locked into the scales. Right, so this is essentially the really quick overview of the knife. That's what it's going to look like. Let's jump over to the browser and have a look at the components that I'm actually going to be getting. So there's essentially 4 components that I'm going to be buying aftermarket. So this is all from USA Knife Maker. I've dealt with them before. They're great, and everything seems to be in stock at the moment, which is fantastic. So yep, pivot barrel, fine pitch, like you can see, is stainless steel, 3/16 diameter, and the lengths of not only the pivot barrels but the screws as well, they all tie into the Fusion 360 design, so that they're exactly what I need them to be, or just under or just over as needed. So that's the first thing we're going to be buying. Second is the pivot screws. These are titanium, which is kind of cool because I might anodize them, probably heat anodize to begin with, and maybe we can try a bit of electrolysis later. It's a little bit tricky to get, nailed spot on, but hey, we'll get there. Yeah, so these are pretty cool. The phosphor bronze washers, and this is the one that we're going to be getting. So 3/16 inside, 5/16 on the outside diameter, and 0.015 inches thick. And these come in a pair, so that's awesome as well. And the button screws, these are for the backspacer, like I said. These are stainless, and in the future I would quite like to get titanium ones, I think. But, you know, we'll get there. And actually you can just see there that the thread is a lot coarser than on the disc pivots, which is a lot finer, tidier thread. But it's good because this is going into stainless steel, whereas this will be going into G10, so you want a bit more grip. Yeah, so I think that is it for this update. I won't be covering any of the cam side of things just yet, but that will definitely be the next step, to make up some tool paths and some fixtures, get that on the CNC and just machine some stuff. So keep an eye out for that update. Thank you very much for tuning in. That's a quick overview of what I'm up to at the moment, and be sure to check in next time. Untitled Chapter signing off. Cheers.